Hello and welcome to the People's Lawyer channel. This is part 5B, Dark Legal Deceptions, of the live in-person talk Disclosure 2022, filmed live in Dorking in October 2022. Now, the legal fiction person deception. An overriding principle of creation: whatever I create, I own. Who created you? Mum and Dad. Who owns you? Mum and Dad, not the government. Governments don't create boys and girls. If or when life is good and when we get our freedoms back en masse, as opposed to having them cropping up in isolated cases, PC is at the top of the pyramid of power. PC is not political correctness, by the way, folks. Prime creator. Some people call God, but you can call it what you want. The prime creative source. The initiating cause of everything, including man. So man is the jewel in prime creator's crown, the apple of its eye. Look how close we are to prime creator. There's nothing between us and prime creator. Below us, government, we created government. Prime creator creates us, so we're owned and controlled by prime creator, but we happen to have been gifted a free will choice planet. So that means we can go right or wrong. That's the gift to humanity. You can get the decision right or you can get it wrong. If you get it right, it's a cause for celebration. If you get it wrong, it's a cause for celebration, because it means you've learned something. So you can't go wrong. Government created by man, so man owns and controls government. Government creates corporations. Corporations are owned and controlled by government. Here's the kicker. Right at the bottom of the food chain, persons. That's who we become when we don't know what on earth is going on. We're right at the bottom of the food chain, the lowest of the low. And most people, most of the time, operate their personhood because it's been normalized. It's not normal. It's not normal not to be a man, a woman, boy or girl. And I'm not going to go down the gender identity route. That's another day's work. It's not normal not to be a man, woman, boy, girl, but it's been normalized because we've been made into persons. So let's have a look at how that works. You could argue that it all started with Unam Sanctam, which is the Holy See decreeing in 1302, Pope Boniface, and I'm sure that probably wasn't such a Boniface, Boniface, declared a trust over the entire planet. So that's the first modern global insanity that took place. There's been so many, but that was pretty huge. Declared that people entering the kingdom of God needed to get past the Pope. Pope had the key to the kingdom of God. And things have gone downhill ever since. What it led to was an inversion process. So rather than us being right at the top, just below prime creator, we've descended without realizing it. That's what snakes and ladders is all about, folks. When you know who you are, you go up the ladder. When you forget who you are, you come down the snake. We've endured a process of inversion. So as we said before, our life-saving viral exosome is now been turned into a pathogenic external virus. So that's an inversion. Poisonous pharmaceuticals have now been inverted into life-saving medication. That's inversion. The man or woman with whom you share great times, frequency, because when we're in each other's field, that's the social distancing, by the way. In other words, taking you away from people's field, out of their heart space. Your fellow man, without whom life would be pretty dull on planet Earth if there's just one of you. It's the source of everything that we hold dear, is now a danger to our health. Stranger danger, the infectious agent that could kill Granny. It's insane, but it's an inversion process. And the man or woman, boy or girl, is now a person. Inversion. Inversion of the truth. The person we believe ourselves to be is created by a process known as birth certification, where your mum or dad or caregiver, the informant, already hints at that a crime is being committed. The informant snitches on the baby and tells on it and tells the government that it has a certain given name and it has a family name, and the government put all those together and create the person on paper. That's your birth certification. The person is therefore owned and controlled by the government, not the man, woman, boy or girl,
via its agent, the birth certificating authority. So there's an agency going on. Your mum or dad deal with the agent, and the agent has a principal, which is the government. The agent is the registry. Registration surrenders authority and jurisdiction over the property that's being registered. That property can be biological. Statutory confirmation of birth name copyright ownership, Copyright Designs and Patents Act 1988, section 163, Crown copyright, where a work is made by Her Majesty or by an officer or servant of the Crown in the course of his or her duties, and then ... because the bit missing, but this is the key bit, Her Majesty or now His Majesty. Her Majesty is the first owner of any copyright in the work. So your person's name, the name that you took to school and then on to work and driver's license, is Crown copyright. You can't use it without paying taxes and fees on it. That justifies them charging you for the use. The person is a legal fictional character and figment of your or our imagination. Doesn't exist. Something that's created by a dead entity, by definition, can't exist. Think about it. No amount of abracadabras can bring to life a name on a piece of paper. It's been described as an energy or entity attachment, a form of possession. If you're operating your personhood unconsciously, then you are unconsciously possessed. I know I'm the world's worst motivational speaker. I can tell by your expressions. Holy shit, I'm possessed. Well, you are. Now, it's not the kind of exorcist sort of spinning head possession. It's more subtle than that. It means that you're careering out of control, you're being persecuted, you're feeling fears that are not natural, your behaviour and thoughts are being modified because that person is owned by the government. And so there's a subtle process of control going on when you overly identify with that person. You're not the legal person. You are not it. You cannot possibly be the legal person as it was created weeks after you were born. Just let that sink in. How can you be your legal name, the person as represented by the legal name? It is a two-dimensional thing or concept or set of symbols that was put together on a computer weeks after you were born. So we have two entities, one live birthing and one dead birthing, presumed still born. And in New Zealand, their birth certificates do have stillbirth and they put tick. So what we think of as live births are in fact stillbirths in New Zealand. Here it's a bit less obvious. They run a presumption of stillbirth after 7 years, when the mum or dad or caregiver has not given the government notice that the baby was in fact born alive. You're not given a live birth certificate. The Vatican get that. You're given, in effect, a certificate of death that operates by presumption after 7 years of not being in contact with the company. It's the Satikavi Act 1666 presumption of death. So you were born alive, and then a few weeks later, your personhood was created, used to be obviously by hand, Crown copyright creation, now on a computer. That's still not enough. They've still got to modify and force you to behave the way they want you to behave, don't they? So how does the corporate government control a living entity, a man, woman, boy or girl? And it's done by contract. They've got to get you into contract. But they have a major obstacle. The Clearfield Doctrine, they must have evidence of a contract. They can't just say they've got a contract. They've got to have tangible evidence that they are the holder in due course of something tangible. Driver's license, or you may be an employee of the government, or you may be a taxpayer. Tangible evidence that you're in contract in some way. A contract can only be established, so this is their obstacle, between contracting parties of equal status or capacity, occupying the same realm. So you know that you're alive, well you do now. Legally you didn't, or maybe you did, and I'm just reminding you. You know that you're alive and you know that the government isn't. Well, you do now. So you know that there's a discrepancy. Two different realms. You can't have a contract between two different realms. It has to be two fictional characters, two fictional entities, or two living entities. There has to be equality of status and capacity. That's the problem that the government have got. Right? This is their workaround. The corporate government is artificial, fictional and two-dimensional and in the realm of the dead. Corpse, dead bodies, corporation. The man, woman, boy, girl are alive, living, breathing souls, existing multidimensionally in the realm of the living. However, and for those of you who know something about this, you've still got the legal person that they created, therefore they own, therefore they control. The legal fiction person is every bit as artificial, fictional and two-dimensional as the government, and also in the same realm of the dead. So now you can start to see how a contract could come about. A contract is therefore possible between the government and the legal fiction person. But it's still not enough. How do they create that contract or get you to be in contract? They need you to step out of your realm of the living into their realm of the dead. How do they do that? Well, it's a two-stage process. Stage one, they convince you that the legal fiction person is you or is owned by you. So when an agent says, what's your name? And you say, my name is, you're mind controlled. You're in breach of copyright or you're committing identity fraud. Because on the birth certificate it says this is not evidence of identity. And you're giving them the birth certificated identity. So civil offence and criminal offence. Just when you say my name is. That's entrapment. I don't go into entrapment on this talk. It is a video on the website, so I'll flag it up later. And obviously we'll look at it on the course, and I'll flag the course up later as well. And by the way, if you think that this is just operable in common law countries, think again. I speak Spanish and I've just watched a Peruvian guy. He was coming either from Ecuador into Peru or from Peru into Ecuador. He got stopped by police and he hit them with natural universal law that he has no obligation to identify himself. After a bit of a standoff, the police officer's got to submit. Just tell me your name, the police officer. No, can't do that. And that would be giving you jurisdiction. Those are the tricks that they have. Just give me a name. No, because the name that you would be giving is evidence that you are happy to stand as the person owned by the government whose agent is standing right in front of you. Therefore, you may as well get out of the car, get down on your knees and kiss that guy's boots. Stage two. So stage one, they get you to own or be the legal fiction person. That's stage one. Stage two, they deceive you into entering into contract, A, as the legal fiction person, or B, in that legal fiction person's name. How do they get us to be the legal person or to own that name? So we're going back to stage one. And here we go. Back at school, the school register. You spend 10 to 15 years answering to the legal name until it sinks in that you and it must be one and the same. That's how they do it, folks. You went to school as Millie, Billy, Mary, Joe, Jack, and you came out as Jack Smith, Millie Hawkins, or whatever. It's not your name. It's a government copyright, crown copyrighted name. And then you take that name very proudly and get exam passes with it, a job, and you're sucked into the matrix. So it's the school register. Are you telling me that a teacher needs to recite or get you to articulate the full name day in, day out? She's seen you for, or he, been seeing you for months, if not years. They can just glance at the register, glance at who's there, work out who's not there, and just go tick, 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 cross. No need to say anything. They don't know that they're entraining you, but that's their practice. But it's entrainment. It's entrainment to take you from the land of the living, the realm of the alive, into the realm of the dead. And in this realm of the dead, you've got infant, child, parent, person, doctor, officer, teacher, employee, taxpayer. Dead, fictional characters. They are the names that the ego possessed carries with it. Statuses. Ego statuses. I'm a subject of the United Kingdom. I'm a citizen of the United States. These are ego statuses. You weren't born. You're just born a boy, a girl, and then you become a man or a woman. So the ego status, the fictional ego status on the left, and then the real status is boy, girl, son, daughter, mother, father, man, woman, physician, not a doctor. If you do have a health problem, don't go to a doctor. You go to a physician. Constable there to serve you rather than officer who's there to fleece you as a protection racketeer on behalf of the protection racket. Teacher, fictional character, no such thing as a teacher because there's no such thing as teaching. There is learning. That's real. And you learn from trial and error or from role models. But there's no such thing as teaching. Fictional, ego nonsense. What you want is a role model, and your best role model, if you're still a boy or a girl, is a slightly older boy or girl who's got the life experience that they can pass on to you. Employee, with a Job having lost control of their life. No, active man or woman. Thank you very much. Serving self, family and community, as opposed to making bosses fat and rich and stakeholders paying for their cruises and yachts. It's insane. We have to say, look, we didn't know what we were doing and now we do. And turn it all around. Now it can be turned around in seconds, minutes, days, weeks, months or years. But turn around it has to be. The time frame is up to you. But turn it around you have to do. You've got no choice. So that we can bring in the new earth for the boys and girls, we have to turn this ship around. Taxpayer? No. Voluntary contributor. Taxation, like every other perceived legal requirement, is contractual, voluntary. No man or woman has ever been taken to court when they didn't sign a piece of paper because they didn't give their consent to contract. So there's nothing to claim on. There's nothing for a corporate agent to claim on. So when people say, David, I owe 10 grand in tax, I just say, have you signed a tax return? No. Congratulations. Rip it up, move on with your life. Yeah, but they're going to come for... Really? They're going to come for you, are you? Well, they've got nothing to come for. David, I owe 10 grand in tax. Have you signed anything? Yes, I filled in and signed and completed and sent off a tax return. Well, then pay it. You're in contract. Job descriptions. Policy. We don't even pronounce the word police right. It's policy. Should be a Y at the end, not an E. Policy man or woman is really a corporate government policy enforcement agent. Teacher is corporate government school curriculum policy enforcement and delivery agent. Doctor is corporate government policy enforcement agent and big pharmaceutical drug rep. Scientist is corporate government and big corporation policy propaganda agent. That's all scientists are now. That's all they are. You've got the odd one waking up and finding, oh shit, I've got a conscience. Now what? But most of them are bought and sold for breakfast. Stage 2. So how are we deceived into entering into contract as the legal fiction person or in the name of the person? How does this deception actually work? Well, it's 2 processes. One is called Joinder, which is very active, and the other one is more passive, called acquiescence, usually silent. Joinder is creating a contract by duping the man, woman into actively accepting the position of person. So, are you Mr. Stephen Jones? Yes, I am. That's Joinder. Do you understand? Yes, I do. Whenever you're answering a question, and we'll look at this in part 2, then you're giving away authority to government. You have express Joinder, you sign in the name of or as the person, or you agree verbally to an offer to contract. You agree verbally that that person is you. That's express Joinder. Active. Yes, that's me. Yes, this is my name. Where do I sign? That's Joinder. You're in contract. Then there's implied Joinder. So you can have verbal, implied. When they ask you a question, you answer it. So the question isn't about your name. The question is like, what are you doing here? Where are you going? Oh, I'm just on the way to the shops. Oh, why have you answered that? I'll tell you why you've answered that question, because that agent is the school teacher that traumatized you all those years ago. And you can't deal with not answering and complying because it brings up too much stuff. That's why what we'll look at in part 2 is how to remove the stuff so they can't trigger us. That's implied Joinder. You do the good or the right thing, which is politely answering a question. We're at war. We're not being polite now. We're being self-defensive, self-preserving. Because if we don't preserve ourselves, we won't be there to protect the boys and girls that they're coming for. Non-verbal implied Joinder, complying with a request. Could you get out of the car, please? You don't get out of the car. If you get out of the car, you're advertising the fact that you don't have your own mind. Your will is therefore subservient to the state. And if the state decides that you are a resource that it can dispense with, well, it will cart you away, fine you, imprison you, or do whatever. Because you've lost your manhood or womanhood at that moment in time. It's gone. And now you're just state-owned property when you comply with a request. There's a man in the sovereign freedom movement whose son is one of those sort of dodgy police operatives, special patrols, you know, like the sort of semi-military police. And his son said, "Dad, tell your freedom-loving friends, if we're ever on, you know, at a rally and you're in our way and we say, get out of our way, tell them not to comply. Because if you get out of their way, they're going to come and hit you over the head with a truncheon, because you're no longer human now. You're no longer a man, woman, boy or girl. You've complied with a dead officer. You're now property." So the attitude should be, no, you move around me. I'm a man, I'm a woman. I'm here, I was here first, you move around me. Otherwise, I will report you for obstruction or for harassment or whatever. Because you're the law, we're the law, they're not. So it's non-verbal, complying with a request. And there's a famous case of a man who asserted himself in court and he'd won the case, he'd had the case dismissed. The judge said, "Could you just take that chewing gum out of your mouth?" And he got that far and he was set upon by security. Because while the chewing gum was still in his mouth, he was a man. As soon as the chewing gum came out of his mouth, he was property owned by the state. There's remote joinder, which is when you answer rather than return their mail. You should be sending their mail back. It's not even lawful post, but that's something we go into on the course. So when you answer their mail, unless you are well versed in how not to give joinder by answering their mail, reserving all your rights and treating yourself as the sovereign, as the beneficiary under their system, referring to yourself as we, not I, and rebutting all their presumptions, which is a skill that takes quite a while to learn, your best bet is just to send their mail back. And we'll look at that in part 2, how to send it back. Franked windowed mail is internal mail, it's not lawful post. So when you open it thinking that it's addressed to you, it's not addressed to anyone. If it's got a window, it's not addressed. First of all, you're an accessory after the fact of mail fraud, because it's not lawful post, because it hasn't got a stamp on it, and it's not addressed to anyone. It's got an empty window with nothing on it. So you're an accessory after the fact of attempted mail fraud, and you're also committing postal tampering. It's not addressed to you, but you're opening it. That's an offence under Postal Services Act 2000, Section 84. So again, it's not normal to open post addressed to someone that you think is you, but it's become normalised. Silent acquiescence, a maxim of Roman civil law. Given an opportunity to refute, reject or deny something, but instead remaining silent, you are deemed to accept it. Now this has got nothing to do with the right to silence so as not to self-incriminate when an accusation of having committed some kind of crime is being made against you. This is postal. If you just bin their stuff, they're entitled to assume that you are consenting on some level to what they're saying, because you haven't disputed it. And even worse, you haven't disputed their right to even say it. It's far safer to dispute their actual right or status or standing to make any claims. So let's say they want £1,000 off you and you say, no, it can't be £1,000, it can't be more than £100. Then you're agreeing to their claim. You're certainly agreeing to their right to bring a claim, because you're not disputing the right to bring a claim. You're disputing the amount. That's dishonourable on your part. You're dishonouring yourself, because they don't have a right to bring a claim. So we never dispute the amount, ever. Postal communication, anything they send us by post is an offer to contract. That's all they can do. What else can they do by post? Clearfield doctrine. They're sending you an offer. Universal postal law allows 72-hour period of grace to make up your mind and serve notice of rejection or offer decline, which means send it back, basically. 72-hour period of grace. If you get something on a Friday or Saturday morning, which they love doing, it's not business days, it's hours, calendar hours, so you've got to get it back by Monday. If we sit on mail for over 72 hours, the principle of silent acquiescence kicks in. We are deemed to accept any offer addressed to the legal fiction. In real terms, it basically means that you've accepted their potential escalation, whatever the escalation is. But if you don't want the escalation, then send it back. Offers to contract with the legal fiction include bills, notices, summonses. So magistrates' court summons can be sent back. Can be sent back. I'm not saying it's the best remedy, because they regard speeding as criminal. So sending a speeding summons back, there are better remedies than that. But for everything else, all the civil things, tax things, council tax, utilities, just send it back. Keep it simple. I could give you more complicated remedy, but we don't have time. Send it back. When you're sending it back, there is something. You can give termination notice and then they write to the occupier. Then as the occupier, well, non-existent entity. Who's the occupier? They can't claim against occupier. Is the legal name toxic and to be avoided at all cost? No. It's created for your benefit and grants access to funds and services that the system has created for your enjoyment. That's why the John of the family Smith or Peter of the family Jones, I'm not one of those. But you have to know how to use the legal name for your own benefit. So use it, don't be it, and don't own it. It's not yours to own and it's not you. It's there for your use, your conscious use, rather than your unconscious being of it and your unconscious owning it. Use it wisely and consciously. And now bringing the two wills together, law and health. To contract a virus, you have to agree to it in the first place, just like any other contract. That's what they need. They always need your consent, even to a virus. That's why they call it contracting a virus. You've agreed to it.
Thank you very much for tuning in to part 5B, Dark Legal Deceptions. Stay tuned now for part 6, Lawful Remedy. Thank you very much.